Awesome. Today we have Lauren Fialdini. She's a 31-year-old American nurse who's been living in Brisbane, Australia for the past 5.5 months. She's also had a 6-week stop in Hobart, Tasmania. During her time abroad, she's explored iconic destinations like Sydney, Byron Bay, and Uluru, as well as Thailand and Singapore. Lauren's working with an international nursing agency, combining her career with her love for travel that was inspired by her mom's globetrotting stories. She's always dreamed of living a culturally rich and adventurous life and chose her current career to help her to do so. Let's dive into Lauren's journey. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's nice to be here.
All the way in Brisbane and
All the way
me
in Brisbane.
Arizona.
Yeah, that's right.
So you're in Brisbane right now, and it is the opposite weather.
Yeah.
So it's summer there.
Yeah, it's feels like deep in the summer right now. So Brisbane's pretty humid. So Queensland is kind of a long state. Like you can drive 10 hours in Queensland and you're still in the same state. It feels like the comparison to me is almost like Texas or Florida from north to south. And humidity wise, it can be similar to Florida. So where I'm at, I'm actually southeast of Queensland, of the state. So I'm not super far from the border to New South Wales, which is where Sydney's at. But it's still pretty hot during the day. So we always kind of have to have we keep our AC off for the most part. I live with 2 other girls, but we try to kind of conserve energy when we can. But when we walk in, it's like, oh, it's so miserable. But it's beautiful when there's blue skies and things. Right now, right now it's a little bit cloudy, so I don't know if it's actually going to rain, but it's supposed to rain later on this week. So it's kind of like those tropical storms that happen, sometimes like mid-afternoon, but it doesn't seem to stay, which is nice. So you can still get the most of your time if you want to spend some time outdoors.
Gotcha. Yeah, it sounds kind of like Florida, kind of like you were mentioning.
Yeah, it's very similar. And you have palm trees and beautiful plants outside. So in that way, it's kind of like Florida too. Yeah.
Gotcha. And those other 2 girls that you're living with, are they nurses as well?
No. So when I came out here, I didn't know anybody. So I was looking at I just Googled where to find housing, like on your own in somewhere in Australia. And then when I decided on Brisbane, there's a site that's called Flatmates. It's basically like, I don't know, it's kind of like, you could do this on Facebook probably too, but basically you can rent out, you can sublease, you could make your profile that you're looking for roommates. It's almost like a dating app type of the way you put your picture and you put some details about you, and then you can just see other people's profile for what you're looking for. So I was able to find this place pretty quickly, actually, which is nice. It can take forever to look for some nice accommodations, but I lucked out. One girl is from France, and she's here for 2 years through her work. So the company that she works for in France also has a company here in Australia, and so that's how she had that opportunity. And then my roommate that I was living with previously, she's from Switzerland, and she was here on on a student visa, so short term. So we're all kind of just here short term, maybe longer, up in the air sometimes, like me, or just for 8 months or just for 2 years.
So, and how does that work with the flat?
Travelers.
Like if one leaves, does somebody just come in and fill the gap, or?
Yep. So another girl just came in, and she's from South Korea. So it's kind of like we're all none of us are from here. But it's nice because we've all come here essentially on our own, and it can be lonely sometimes. We don't always have a friend group that's already embedded here.
Right.
So it's nice to know that you're not really alone. You're all in it together, essentially.
And
Yeah.
who's choosing the roommate? Is it like the owner of the flat, or is it the girls that are there already?
It's usually the girls. So I don't know how it was before, but I was kind of a last minute. I was honestly just looking for really short term housing, like 1 to 3 months. And the girls that were here before were looking for more long term, but they were having a hard time finding someone to fill the room for a long period of time. And so she came up to me and she was like, "Hey, I know you're here for a short time. That's okay." But I ended up actually staying here for a little bit longer, and now I signed the lease and I'm here till August. So
Till August.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, because my visa that I applied for last August, it's for a year.
Yeah.
So I figured I kind of want to just have a home base, even if I'm traveling either for work or for leisure. I kind of want to just have my home base here. And Brisbane is fun. I don't think a lot of people like to come here as a tourist as much, because there doesn't seem to be as much to draw you to it, like the Sydney Opera House. Melbourne has really great music and food. And of course, like if you want to see the Northern Territory and really get a good Aussie feel, rugged Australian experience in the outback, then I can see the allure of that. But Brisbane is just like a fun city with a river in the middle. But it's nice to live in.
So there's no kangaroos outside your window?
No, there's not. Surprisingly. In this apartment complex, and I'm on the 4th floor, you would think they just hop right up.
So they don't. So have you gotten to see some kangaroos while you're there?
Yeah, well, and it's funny because I feel like kangaroos and wallabies are like deer back home.
Squirrel.
They're everywhere.
Deer. Right.
Squirrel, yeah. And so at first I was thinking, oh my gosh, why is no one stopping on this? You're walking on a path. You think, why is everyone just walking by and I'm just taking videos and pictures? But there's a lot of wallabies. So at least some of the places where I've seen, so kangaroos I've seen here and there, but wallabies are kind of a smaller, I think they're really cute.
So cute. And I haven't seen one in a while, so for the people that have never seen one, how would you describe a wallaby?
Oh gosh, they're they're like a kangaroo, but they're smaller. They're like a petite kangaroo is what I feel like.
Do they have a tail?
They have a tail. Yeah.
Aren't they on 4s instead of 2 legs?
They still have, they duck down when they eat. I'm miming it out. They still, they can sit up and then they're on 2s, but they still graze the same way that kangaroos would. Some of them can be big and they look like kangaroos, but just size-wise is a big difference. I'm not a zoologist. I don't know.
Not an expert all of a sudden.
But they seem to also be a little bit skittish in comparison to kangaroos. At least that's been my experience with them when you see them out in the wild. But yeah, they're really cute, and there seems to be more of them. At least in Tasmania, there's a ton of them. So
and I definitely want to get.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I want to get into that. I kind of wanted to rewind a little bit and ask you a little bit about where you're coming from, basically.
Yeah.
Where are you from in the U.S.? How did you end up becoming a nurse, kind of to lead you to this journey that you're on?
Yeah, totally. Sorry, my ADHD brain just bounces all over the place.
Oh, I love it.
But originally I'm from Washington State. Natasha and I went to high school together. So grew up in, Washougal, Washington, and I went to college in Portland, so really not far away at all. And I started off as a bio major. I was thinking I wanted to work in the medical field somewhere, but didn't really know where. Didn't want to do nursing for a while, and then my mom's friend, we got lunch with him one day. I just remember he was talking to me about travel nursing, and that you can, with nursing, it's great because you have so many different avenues you can work, with kids. You can work with maternity. You can do elderly. You can do emergency ICU. There's so many different pathways you can do. You can not even work in the hospital if you want to. So when he talked about travel nursing, that you could just basically be paid to bounce around to different places all the time, and I thought, absolutely, that sounds like something I'd love to do. So I essentially went to nursing school for that reason, to travel, because I loved doing that as a kid. My mom traveled a lot when she was growing up, and so
Like where? What did she do?
Yeah, my grandfather was an ambassador so he was Korean and my grandmother's German, and they met through the embassy. Yeah, they did a lot of cool stuff.
Wait, so you're part Korean?
Yeah, I'm a quarter Korean.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
I guess I didn't even consider what you'd be. Your last name sounded almost Italian. So
Yes, yeah,
okay.
Italian. From my dad's side, yeah. But, kind of a melting pot of different... My mom lived in a lot of different places. She lived in Rome at one point, in Ghana, Africa. She was born in Switzerland, so she's done a lot of traveling when she was little, like when she was born, and then when she was younger, she'd move around all the time. And I just thought how interesting that is. Whenever I'd see my grandparents, they'd have these albums of all the different countries they live in or had lived in, and I was just thinking, oh, that sounds like something that maybe I could do one day. I don't know if that would ever happen. But yeah, so that kind of got me on the travel bug a little bit. And just, it's hard when you're going to school, you're thinking, this is so far away. But I worked as a nurse for a few years, probably, I think 4 or 5. And then I started...
during COVID too?
It was so actually I was working as a staff nurse, and I stayed at my hospital through the beginning of COVID. But that was kind of also when a lot of travel contracts were coming up. Some people didn't know what travel nursing was until COVID and right after COVID. So, it's something I always wanted to do, and then combined with the higher rates that were being offered for nurses that were willing to travel, it was going to be dangerous no matter whether you stayed at one hospital or if you traveled to go to a different hospital. So that to me was, at that point I was like, let's do it, let's go.
So you did do
it. Yeah, so I started doing it. I'd been doing it for about 4 years. So I've been straight traveling for about 4 years across the U.S.
That's insane.
I've never lived anywhere longer than 5 or 6 months. That's in the past 4 years. So so I think the idea of staying somewhere for longer than that time freaks me out, even if it's not going back home. Just because I'm so used to moving around and living my life in a suitcase, basically. So I'd fill my car up with whatever I could take with me, and then I just drive from place to place. Like the first contract I drove to Florida, but I went with my dad, so we kind of made like a trip out of it. Yeah, and then he flew back, so we got to stop at places like New Orleans. Neither of us had been. Drove through along I-10. You probably know I-10 pretty well.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. But yeah, and just drove anywhere else that I went. I've lived in Maine, Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina a few times. And
a few times.
And North Carolina's, it's awesome, actually. I went to Charlotte, so I drove through, I worked in Charlotte for about 3 months, and then Raleigh, North Carolina for about 3 months as well. Yeah.
Would you say that's your favorite place that you were, or it just kind of happened to be a couple of different contracts available there?
I think it was a combination of both.
Yeah.
Because I felt like going in the wintertime, I wanted to go somewhere warm, and then in the summertime, I wanted to go somewhere cooler.
Yeah.
But North Carolina is a really cool state. It's kind of like, in a way, it reminded me of similarly to West Coast a little bit. Not quite as, obviously not the mountains, but they do have some mountains, and they have the ocean, and then they have the city. So they kind of have everything.
Yeah. I
Just on the opposite side.
Yes, exactly. I actually had stopped in Charlotte before for work, and I thought the same thing. I was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of Washington with all the pretty trees, and there's a lot of like dark night sky. Like there wasn't a ton of lights. Maybe like Charlotte, yes, but like outside, no, and it kind of gives small town vibes.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Like, people are nice. It's not, people are friendly, I think, for the most part. And I don't know if it's, like, the Southern charm or what that is. But, yeah, it's a good, I feel like it's a good place to live. I have some friends that have settled there. And, it's a good place to be. But that's cool that you've gone through there.
I really haven't gone through most of the U.S., so I have a preference for traveling and living abroad, so I haven't. But it's cool that you've had that experience, and it sounds like that it must have prepared you for what you're experiencing now in Australia.
Yeah, I think that if I had been staying and working somewhere for, I don't know, just a few years, and then deciding all of a sudden to leave that job and go to Australia, I don't know if I would have done it, because it's scary. It's a big change, So I give it to anybody who does that, who's not used to moving around all the time, because it's halfway across the world. It's a big move, but I think it's worth it, and everyone should honestly live abroad once in their life. Because it just teaches you so much about yourself and different cultures and different ways of living that you never really tried yourself or thought about.
Do you think that you've learned more about yourself traveling abroad than you did traveling throughout the U.S.?
Yes, I think so. Because you don't have the comfort of being able to just, that's a good question. You don't have the ability of just flying back home or driving back home or even just meeting friends somewhere. You're so far away from everything that's comfortable to you. So you kind of have to just find comfort in new things and like new traditions that you make for yourself. I think that's the way that I've done that on a smaller scale, just within the U.S., but it is different when I've only been here for 5.5 months, but I've already felt like I've lived so many different lives just in that 5.5 months, and life is very different for me now than it was when I left. So just with what I want, maybe, and and like what I want out of life and what I would want out of a future.
Those have changed for you since you've gone traveling. Really?
Yeah,
you had a certain idea, and now it's different?
Kind of, yeah. Well, I never thought I would stay here for a year, and then people ask me sometimes, are you going to get your permanent residency here? And I used to think absolutely not, but then sometimes I think to myself, that could be nice, actually.
Whoa.
Yeah, but it's still early. I haven't made any decisions whatsoever.
Would mom and dad freak?
I don't think they think that I would actually do it, but I also, I don't know. They don't have their passports. They need to get their passports. So maybe if I did get this, then that would be, I know.
That's crazy.
Maybe
after all the stories from your mom.
I know. Well, it's been a long time since she's been anywhere really international. So it kind of lapsed, and maybe not something that she focused on so much after having kids and everything. And but yeah, I tell her all the time, like, you would love it. You should come out here.
She's got to get a passport again. That's a great reason. That's a great reason for
Mom,
them
get
to
a passport.
Get one. Yeah, seriously. And so they settled down in Washington, and you're not an only child then.
No, I have an older sister.
Okay.
She lives in Nashville. So fun, by the way. Have you been to Nashville?
Having an older sister? Oh, Nashville.
Oh, that too. That too. Good point.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it's cool. She also, this should be for my entire family. Everybody get your passports so you can visit me.
She doesn't have one either.
No.
Oh my God, chop chop.
I know. I tell them all the time. But I have some friends that are talking about coming out to see me. So I think it's fun to know people too that live in a different country, because you're like, well, I can just stay with them, or I can, it gives you more of a reason to go out there too. So it's not just one day I'll go to this place across the world. It's, well, I'm going to see my friends, so
sure, that's
enough of a reason. Yeah.
Gotcha. So tell me, how long did it take for you from like finding out about this possibility of going to Australia to actually going, and how did you find out the opportunity?
So I knew that international travel nursing was an option. I just had no idea how you could do that, if it was, because I was used to working with agencies. So it's basically like I'm not working directly with a hospital. I'm just basically employed through an agency. And every year there's this thing that's put on called TravCon. It's basically this big convention for traveling professionals that takes place in Vegas. So it's always really fun. But they have normally panels with agencies or just different things that might interest travel professionals. And one of them was Healthcare Australia. It was the agency that I'm actually working with now.
Yeah.
And I remember going with my friend and her saying, I really want to see the Australia panel. And I was thinking, I have no interest in going to Australia. I'm happy to do what I'm doing.
What?
I was thinking, like, I'm really not, I don't care. I'm not into kangaroos. I just, it was just, like, my mentality was so silly. But I just thought, that's so far away. I've never been. I don't think there's anything that draws me there. And I sat in the panel, and even then I was thinking, so what? Which is so funny now.
Yeah.
But then I think like a year went by, and I was thinking again, what's the next step, basically? Because I've been traveling around within the U.S., and at that point it was kind of like, okay, I've seen a lot of the places that I've been wanting to see, and at this point, like, what do I do now? And then I was taking international trips, and I just felt like every time I would leave the country, I'd be nothing wrong with the U.S., but I mean, sure, every time you leave, you just kind of feel like you want more, basically, right? I mean, you've traveled a lot,
totally,
so you know as well, that feeling. It's almost like I said, it's like a travel bug. Like, you just want to go. Or travel drug. Good point. Very addictive.
Yes.
So, anyway, I had been looking more actively into working in another country. And at that point, I had just come back from this Europe trip that was stereotypically life-changing, and, oh my gosh, I want to go to Europe now. I want to live in England, and then in England, from there, I can just bounce around to different countries in Europe. So, sounds like a good time. I found an agency that staffs with international nurses, and I still remember the email that, after my inquiry, she emailed me back and said, I just want you to know, because I told her my background, where I'm from and everything, and she said, you're from the U.S., the pay is not comparable to the U.S.
really?
for nurses.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
She was straight up with me, which I appreciate her honesty. And then she said, and you'd have to be here for 2 years, basically. And you wouldn't be in London. So I thought, that's kind of a bigger commitment than I thought.
Yeah.
So then I thought, oh, I remember Healthcare Australia. Maybe I'll just talk to them. Maybe just set up a phone call or whatever and see what that is. And if that doesn't work, then I'll look and do something else and just stay in the U.S. And the phone call with the consultant that I spoke to was so easy, so relaxed. She and I just talked for like 45 minutes about just different places that she'd lived and places that I'd lived and why Australia is so great. And so at that point I was like, oh, I'm so sold on this. And that was early 2023. So it took me a little while to come out here.
Yeah, it did.
I kind of started the application process, but I wasn't fully invested all at once, which I kind of regret. I wish I had come out here actually sooner.
Why? Do you think it would have changed things for you?
I feel like I would have stayed for, so basically the visa that I'm under is valid for a year. And you can reapply for it. It's the work and holiday visa. So it's not quite the same as the standard working holiday visa that can apply to people from the UK. Theirs, it stays until you can use it again until you're 35. But from the US, it's until you're 31.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I turned 31 out here. So, so unfortunately, I can only be here on this visa until August. There's other visa options, but it's the most flexible one. So you can reapply for the same visa 3 times, which is nice. So if you come out here when you're 25, you can reapply for it 3 times. And it's relatively affordable. I think it's like $430 US, and it's valid for a year.
And I'm pretty sure there's no getting denied. I mean, unless you're a felon, right?
Right. Yeah, right. I think so. It's pretty easy to get.
There's a really big reason why they shouldn't let you in.
Yeah. It's pretty easy to get for the most part. It's 18 to 31. So it's anybody that falls in that category. And the nice thing about that visa is why so many people are on it is there's so much flexibility. You can be employed in Australia for that, but there's no commitment. So you can work for 3 months straight and just use the other 9 months to travel, and that's fine. And you can come and go into the country as you please during that year. So, yeah, lots of flexibility.
So I don't know if you know or if I told you, but I did a working holiday in Melbourne.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So my husband and I, we did, my mom and dad were living there at the time. They were working, my mom worked for Boeing, and so she had like a 2 or 3 year contract there. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was super cush, having my family there. I had free food, free stay, because, they're great.
Oh, yeah.
so we just, we got to go. But one thing that I know for the working holiday visa was you couldn't take a position longer than 6 months. So I was just kind of wondering how that was for you in nursing. Or are you nursing? You're nursing.
Yeah, I'm nursing out here, yeah. I guess I didn't answer that part. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just kind of circling back. That's awesome.
You did say you were with the nursing program. Yeah.
I think, maybe yeah. Well, it's different because it's agency. So I don't work 6 months straight with a facility. I'm working, there's the Healthcare Australia, they have travel contracts, which is what I just went to Hobart for 6 weeks. So that would be considered, okay, you're not working 6 months in Brisbane. You can take a travel contract. You can work at different hospitals within the city, which is what I've been doing. So there's it's okay to stay with the agency because you're not just working at one place, even though technically your employer is Healthcare Australia. Yeah.
They found the loophole.
They found the loophole. So, yeah, so it's nice because it works out. I don't have to onboard with a different agency because that takes so much time in itself.
Oh, really? Tell me about that process. And then tell me about how easy or difficult it is to I guess, start working with them.
Yeah. So, basically, I didn't know what I was doing when I...
I mean, as most of us, right?
I was basically relying on the agency, Healthcare Australia, to tell me what I needed to do. Like, apply for the visa, and because I just said I'm on board, I just have no idea how to start. So she laid it all out there. She told me different visas I could apply for. She recommended that there's a licensing board for nursing that's Australian, so obviously you have to apply for that, and that can take some time in itself. So she recommended that I start that process about 6 to 8 months before I planned on coming out here.
Oh, wow. And is that a must? Like, you must do that?
Yes. Okay. If you want to work as a nurse in Australia, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So you don't have to retest for it. So the nice thing is that U.S. nursing, as far as programs go, is a little bit more, they say it's a little bit more intensive than nursing courses in Australia. So they don't make you test at all. I think I had to do one little math calculations test, like for drug calculations, but that was it. It wasn't any intense math test like you would imagine. Sure. Didn't have to test, but it's a lot of just tedious work. So getting like your, like my diploma and birth certificate and all these things, and they wanted them certified in a certain way. So it's just more tedious. You know how it goes.
Yeah. I hate when people are always asking for like birth certificate and diploma. High school diploma too I've had sometimes.
Right.
Like, oh, really? Like, that was a decade ago, bruh.
How do you remember those things?
Yeah, I don't know.
They wanted, actually, the agency, they wanted the address of my elementary school.
Oh, please.
They needed to know where I first learned English. And so I thought, well, I guess we start with elementary school. But they wanted the address and the phone number and a point person listed. I was like, I don't think you're going to be able to reach my principal from when I was 6 or 7, but you could try.
That's crazy. Like, it was my mom and dad. You can have their phone number.
Yeah, I should have said that. That's smart. Next time.
Literally. I mean, we all do learn from our parents, obviously, unless, they don't speak English, but...
True, yeah. That's a good point, though. Maybe I should have done that and just put my own home address.
You really messed up, Lauren.
I
Caused
did.
a lot of work for yourself.
I did. So, so there's those 3 things. You apply for the visa, you apply through the agency, which in itself is... It's basically resubmitting the things you already submitted for the APRA, which is the Australian Nurses Board. Okay. So once you get approved through them, you just have to pay for a renewal for your nursing, basically your license to work as a nurse, every year. Mm-hmm. And then they recommend you apply for the visa because it doesn't take as much time. I think mine took maybe like 2 months for it to come to me. So I was waiting 6 to 8 months for the licensing board, but it was only 2 months tops after you submitted everything to get the visa approved. So it's really quick. They said maybe 3 months or so, but it came quicker than that for sure.
Got it. So I thought you were kind of dragging your feet for a while, but it sounds like the process is kind of a longer process.
It can be. I definitely did still drag my feet a bit. But I think it was just because it was so much tedious work, and I almost didn't get a chance to go. I would have had to restart I actually thought about not even coming here because there was an email that got lost in my inbox, and they told me if you don't respond by this day, and that day had already passed, then they said they'd have to confiscate my application, basically.
No.
And so I told them, I'm like, I swear I didn't see this. They were really understanding, because at that point I was like, I've put in so much work, I've put in all this money, and then you're going to tell me you're just going to throw it away. Maybe it's not meant to be. But anyways, shout out to, I forgot his name, the guy who lives in APRA.
Yeah, you know who you are.
You know who you are.
If you're listening to this by chance.
Yeah. I remember you. You're the best.
That's awesome. So how much was that? So you mentioned the visa was, $400 some US dollars. What was the other cost that you had?
I had it up here on my computer, actually, because I completely forgot. So the fee is $185, but that doesn't include. You also have to, like, for the APRA, you also have to pay for medical, at least. They make you have, you get the x-ray for your TB. Well, you probably had to do this for your visa, right?
Yeah, but I can't really remember. It was a while ago.
Yeah, so you pay for that out of pocket as well, and that was about $300 US dollars, give or take.
Wow.
It was expensive.
That was in the US or that was in Australia?
That was in the US. So they said you have to basically have a physical, some blood tests, and an x-ray, and have all that done, then submit that. But there were only certain places I would do it, and there wasn't any in Portland, which is where I was living at the time. So I went up to Seattle, which is all in itself like
5
shoot,
hours?
I'm gonna have to figure out. Yeah. Not like.
Am I totally wrong?
It's like a little bit, but it's okay. I feel like you could stretch it out and make some stops, and it would absolutely be 4.5 hours. Absolutely would.
It's been a while since I made that drive.
You've lived in Arizona. You're
you're
used to the cactus life. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's like 2.5 to 3 hours from.
Okay.
Yeah, but.
Or you just drive really fast.
Or you just drive really fast. Yeah. You can make it probably in an hour.
You do. No, you're not known as a fast driver.
Never.
Okay.
Anyway,
so you made that trek.
Yeah. So it's not like it was a huge trek, but it was just kind of one of those things where you're like, got to go up to Seattle for this, and then come right back down. But it was all worth it. It's not like I had to drive like 10 hours to go and do that. And I only had to do it once. So, and I didn't have to test for anything related to nursing. I just had to get all my documents together. Mm-hmm. So it's actually, like, I think of it as tedious, but really it's like, it wasn't that big of a deal. When you think about the grand scheme of things you apply for, jobs you apply for, always changing your resume and uploading that and applying for jobs, like, this was not actually as difficult as I'm making it sound like it was a big deal. It wasn't really a big deal.
So remind me and the listeners that might not know about nursing, to be a nurse, you have to do 4 years of school, or are there rapid nursing programs? How does that work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's the option of you can get your 2-year degree, or you can get your 4-year degree. And a lot of schools or you can get your bachelor's and then get an accelerated program. That's another option that some people do, and it's a little less than 2 years. Mm-hmm. But it's generally how they employ nurses, at least in Oregon, which is where I went to school, is they were saying you need to get your 4-year degree if you want a job, which is not true.
Not true.
Not true.
Really?
Yeah, especially across the country. There's a lot of nurses just have their 2-year degree, and they're great nurses. It doesn't take anything.
Just like, I got ripped off. Like, shit.
I did feel that way. But at least you never have to go back to school, is the way I think of it. Sure. Whereas there's some companies that are pushing people who have 2-year degrees to finish up and get their 4-year degree. So, yeah. So, but it really was just 2 years of like undergrad, and then the other 2 years were straight nursing. So technically, I guess it's a 2-year, but I got my bachelor's in nursing. So,
So
yeah.
what was the requirement for Australia? Would they have accepted 2 years, or you had to have your bachelor's? Do you know?
That's a good question. I don't actually know. I know I've talked to some of them, and it's split. You know, some of them have their 2-year, and then some of them have their bachelor's.
Okay.
And of course, it's different too. Their schooling is totally, well, not totally different, but somewhat different. And so the way that it's laid out, it might be semester, it might be quarter, some classes aren't included. Like, what was it? I was talking to someone about pathophysiology, and they're like, "What's that?" I was like, "Oh, that's a course that I hated in nursing."
That was the worst one, Mr. Thompson, or whatever his name, whoever it was.
Yeah. Right, exactly. But yeah, it's just, you know, you're still doing the same job at the end of the day, which is what's funny. So it doesn't really matter where any of us went to school, because you learn most of your training, like other jobs, on the job.
So you don't think that you were that prepared after college to be a nurse?
I feel like a lot of your, like, it's so different didactic versus clinical practice, right? Like,
and didactics in person?
It's like open a book, textbook.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
For us dummies.
No, not at all. Yeah, so I feel like there's such a difference with you can be book smart and know how to treat a patient from A to Z, but when you have someone in front of you and there's more of a critical thinking that has to take place with just having clinical experience. Like, that's really what it is. Like, once you get experience, then you can see a patient from across the room. They always say this. You can see a patient from across the room and you can say sick or not sick, basically, with just one look. You don't have to really always look at all of their history, all of their details, because life is that quick, and it's when you're in a life and death kind of situation, you should be able to recognize that quickly. But it does take time, and it does take experience in the job to figure that out, like get that intuition.
Sure.
That can't really be taught in school. So I guess I wouldn't say I think anybody would be a little bit unprepared when they go into the job and you're expected to have people's lives in your hand, but you learn as you go. And as long as you feel supported and you have people that you can go to for if you have questions or concerns, then that's been the biggest help for me, at least.
Okay, so if I was a high schooler and I was like, oh, this sounds like something that's for me, could I do 2 years of nursing school and go straight to Australia? Do they require a certain amount of working experience?
Not necessarily. I only say this because I met a girl here in Brisbane who she grew up in the U.S. And then she moved out to Australia to go to school here. So I think if I were in high school and I were thinking of coming out to Australia sooner, there's the possibility to do that. You can, as long as you're 18 to 31, you can be out here on a working holiday visa or a student visa. You could come out on a student visa and go to school here and start working. So there's that option too.
So
that would be really cool.
Yeah. I know, nobody told
me. Cool
me.
Decision.
Yeah. Only if this channel was available when I was in high school.
Right, exactly. Be taking notes.
Yes, exactly. I'd go tell my
Step
little
one.
self.
Yes, exactly.
So did they require you to have working experience to accept you? And did you have to pay the agency, or is it just as soon as you're employed they get paid?
Yeah, it's as soon as you're employed, you take a contract with a hospital or you work casually and they get reimbursed. I'm not really sure how they get paid. I know agency-wise, it's at least for casual employees. So casual meaning like I can pick up a shift or a couple shifts during the week, and I just get an hourly pay. I don't get, accommodations or food stipends the way that agency would be also in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I really answered your question, actually. I just realized.
Yeah, so
Sorry.
did you have to pay that agency before you went to Australia?
Oh, paying.
Or were they just supporting you all the way through, even before they got paid?
So you don't really pay them. I'm trying to think about all the payments I made before coming out here, but I don't think I paid them for anything. I think it's everything just gets submitted through their portal, and then once you're out here, they do offer to reimburse you for part of your flight. Out here, you do have to submit a certain number of hours, but you can just start working right away. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much what I did. I came out here. It took about 2 weeks just to get a bank account and to get on the tax side of things, like to get a tax file number and just basically get set up that way. And then I was ready to start. So I think it took like 2 weeks for me to get officially employed through them. And then I could pick up as many shifts as I wanted. It was so weird. Once you do all this work and then all of a sudden you're cleared and it's like, oh, I can work full time now. This is so weird. With not really any orientation. That's the one thing that can be a bit of a downside is you basically start on the job, and so you should definitely have, if you want to work as a nurse in Australia, I would recommend having at least 2 years of experience. But I mean, I came here after maybe like I think 8 years of experience, and I still felt like it was a little intimidating.
Wow. Okay, so they're not like they fully expect you to be able to do your job. They don't give you an orientation. Okay, got that. Mm-mm. And they didn't necessarily have a requirement for you to have had X amount of time, or that you know of, because you already had been working for so long.
Right. Yeah. It's you're basically they look at all of your experience, and then they say people can help you on the job, obviously, and people are very nice in Australia in general. But on the job, I felt so bad for the people that I was working with that day, on my first day, because they probably looked at me like, what? Where is she from? Does she know how to do anything? Because everything's so new. Everything's on paper, which I'm used to everything being on computer for charting and for meds and doctor's orders, and you're trying to understand the scribble. And it does happen. That's a big difference between... I think between Australia and back home is just not having the same. It's just little things that are different. It's not the medicine in general is not that different across the world. It's just not. But it's just little ways that people do things, like writing orders, or Australians use a lot of slang, as you know. So having to understand what. I mean, I remember the first time someone said, "Oh, can you give me a tea and a bicky?" And I thought, what is a bicky?
I don't know what either of those things are. Can you explain?
Oh, just basically like a cup of tea and a biscuit. But I didn't know a bicky. Okay. Yeah. And medications, they'll use sometimes the brand name, but the brand name is different than the brand name in the US. So I find myself Googling things, but then sometimes they use the generic name of the medication, which is good. It's like acetaminophen is Tylenol. So, but they don't have that here. It's called paracetamol, which is also, in England, it's also paracetamol. It's not acetaminophen. And then they call it Panadol for short. So Tylenol, Panadol.
Oh, like, and you'd have had no idea. Yeah.
No idea. And then they're saying it with... At that time, I was like, and their accent, I'm thinking, I don't even know how to spell that. How do I find that?
How do I look it up?
How do I look it up? So that threw me off for probably a good month.
Mm-hmm.
Until I got to understand, oh, you're talking about this, you're talking about that. Things that are not actually that different than what I'm used to. It's a different accent and
Little translation,
maybe different
yeah.
words. Yeah, just a little lost in translation, but we meet in the end, so it's
Yeah,
okay.
I remember I was working at a gym, and this lady comes up and she goes, "Oi, hon, where's the bean?" And I'm like, "The bean? I don't know. What do you like? What do you want a bean for?" And she's talking about obviously, the trash bin or trash can, but it just was
Yeah.
not. It was not going through my brain.
Yeah, that is so true. And the way of saying bean and speaking quickly too. Because
Mm-hmm.
maybe if I could just record people and then do like 0.5 speed on what they're saying the first month I was
Really?
here, I would have probably done fine. But
They do talk
yeah.
fast, don't they?
Yeah. They definitely do. Yeah. But
That's so funny.
it's kind of like people in New York too. I'm sure it's hard to understand. I mean, I feel like it's sometimes hard to understand people from New York or for people from Boston because they talk fast too.
Or the country people that are always speaking in these weird terms. Like, I was watching an Instagram the other day where this guy was like, "You look." What did he say? He was talking to his dog, and he's like, "You look as cozy as a tick in a rug or something." I don't know what.
Huh.
I don't know. But
Tick in a rug.
I
That
don't
does
know.
sound like a country term.
Or a flea in a rug, or I don't know.
Oh.
But yeah.
Are you going to use that phrase now?
I think I might have to go look it up before I continue with that. But yeah, that's funny. So you have met people that are also working holiday nurses?
Yeah, a couple of my friends that I've met some people through, thank God for social media because I've met some people through like Instagram pages or Facebook pages where it's everybody that's on a working holiday visa. So who lives in the city. So for example, and specifically for girls too, because you know it's hard to sometimes find your a group of girlfriends that you can hang out with and trust and get to know.
Well, and two,
like dating is different, but
exactly. Like, do you want to meet guys because most likely they're gonna it's not necessarily gonna be just to be friends. So
exactly. So there's pages like that that are made for people that are just here for a short time, and for the most part, and we're all on the same visa. So I befriended some people. One of the girls I met on there, Holly, we went to Thailand together just a couple months ago. Yeah, so it's like, and we hadn't even known each other very long, but she's from England, and I was like, hey, do you want to go to Thailand for the Lantern Festival? She's like, oh yeah, that sounds great, let's do it. So you just meet friends along the way that you can vibe with and hang out with, and maybe even go on trips together, even if you're both there for maybe a year, maybe less, maybe more. So at least social media does help with that part. But I have met some people even working that are also on the working holiday visa, and everybody has their own plan for what they're going to do next. So some people are going to extend it. Some people want permanent residency, and so everyone's kind of going on their own path, but it's a surprising number how many people are out here and are not Aussies.
So have you seen other people doing different jobs that maybe surprised you or was interesting for you to see?
I think a lot of people who are on the visa that I'm on, they do things like you said, when you're working at the gym or coffee shops or like clothing stores. I found a lot of people at clothing stores, I'll hear them and like, oh, that's so great, you're from wherever. And that's sometimes I'll hear like this one girl at Lululemon, she was talking to me, and I found out she's from Singapore, but I could just hear when she spoke to me that she had learned English from an American teacher. just the
So
way
funny.
she would. It's so interesting how it can
She
be
said
different
pants
because
instead of trousers, didn't she?
that's it. You got it. Yeah, because you can hear the little intonation with like Australian English versus, or even people that say British words, where they might have learned English for the first time. So, yeah, but it's always a little surprising when you just assume you're a foreigner and everyone around you is a local, but then you get to know them. There's a tour guide that I had in Tasmania when I was down there for a few weeks, and she's from England originally, and you can still hear it, but she's lived in Australia for 15 years, so she's kind of almost trained her accent out of her English accent.
Mm-hmm. And I know for Americans, it's almost hard to distinguish, I would say, British between Australian.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But if you hear them time and time again, then you, like, I used to feel that way too, but now I'm starting to pick up a little bit but it is hard because you don't see a lot of people from Australia or England that live in the U.S. all the time.
Right.
New Zealand is also hard. Between New Zealand, like Kiwis and Aussies.
How do you tell?
I can't. I know that there's a difference, but whenever I try to guess, I'm always wrong.
I think when they're blatantly Maori, and they're like, "Hey, bro, what's up?" Like you can
Oh,
kind of yeah, you can kind of tell, but like
that's true.
But when they're not, you're like, "Oh, I really don't know."
Yeah, you're right. That it's certain words probably that but I haven't been able to pick up it yet. I'm hoping that I can after I'm here for a year. I'm hoping I can kind of have picked that up, but we'll see. To be continued.
To be continued. Wow. So I guess I want to like leave the floor to you as far as what have you experienced there? What was Tasmania like compared to Australia?
Yeah. Well, actually, Tasmania is just a state.
Oh gosh, see?
It's no. It's common. I think it's common for people to think that too because it's an island basically on its. You can take a ferry from Melbourne to go to Launceston, which is the most north city in Tasmania, but itself, like, you have to fly out there it's almost like how Hawaii is.
Okay.
It's part of the U.S., but it's
very good analogy.
Yeah, because and even Tasmanians call the rest of Australia the mainland.
Okay.
Which is so they say, they're just mainlanders. Tasmania is very small, so it's kind of like that small town feel a little bit. It's a little bit colder. You're actually closer to Antarctica than you are to the northern state or city in Australia. So I thought that was interesting, that you're closer from Hobart to Antarctica than you are to Darwin, which is in Australia, even though you're part of the same. So, it's being out here is like it's not necessarily for everybody, I think. Like, I have some friends that have said, "Hey, how's your experience? I'm thinking about doing this too, but I don't know." And like, I think the biggest thing that I've learned with coming out here was just like moving anywhere is you have to figure out for yourself what kind of life you want to be leading every day. So being in Australia, people are pretty active. Everyone wants to go on a walk every single day, ride their bikes, and so it's a very active country in itself. Depending on what state you're in, what city you're in, there's like Aboriginal communities and different, just like Native American communities scattered throughout the country. There's the bigger cities, there's the smaller, like, bogan towns, is what they say.
That's kind of like hillbilly, right? Or
hillbilly, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, bogan. It's
That's
a fun
term.
word.
Yeah.
It's a fun term. It's not a good term.
No,
But
derogative, but everyone
yeah.
says it.
Everyone says it, so it's fine.
It's fine, right?
But really, so like to me, I feel like I'm actually feeling like I live a healthier life here than I ever really did back home.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's just the always wanting to be outside, always wanting to be active. Everyone's happy for the most part. At least feels like a lot happier than back home sometimes. People just get a little stressed out about little things. And not that that doesn't happen here, but I think just the overall culture is just to be happy, be in a good mood, get some vitamin D, not take life too seriously, and try to be as happy and healthy as you can, really.
And that's whether you're an Australian or somebody that's on a working holiday visiting.
Yeah, I've noticed that when I've spoken to different people that have come from the UK or come from Mexico or come from Spain, they all say, I am so much happier and I feel like I care about my health out here. Like I do. I've become a runner, or I've become like someone who cooks dinner for myself every night. I used to go out all the time, and now like I really am taking care of myself and nourishing myself. And it's, when you're around people that seem to do that more, then you just kind of do it automatically as well. And so I know that there's definitely places like that in the U.S. too, but it's it depends sometimes where you live and maybe how much sunshine is out there outside. Seasonal depression is a real thing.
You can't get me to move back to Washington ever, ever, ever.
I was going to say you must know really well.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's a big move mentally and emotionally to leave everyone, your friends, your loved ones, everything that you know, and to go somewhere and to start over. So you kind of have to have that healthy mindset. Otherwise, it's just not good. You're out in another country, and you could be spiraling, and you just don't want to do that. You want to be happy. You want to live a good life. You want to explore. You're traveling. You're living across the world. Like that's such an exciting thing that it's a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity. So
you kind of have to advantage. Detach and disconnect from what you know at home a little bit, right? So you can really appreciate what's going on where you are.
Right. Not like you said, detach a little bit so you're not just ignoring friends or family. I think there's like a healthy balance, but you want to have a supportive group of people around you too, and you want to be able to support your friends and family even if they're across the world. But yeah, there's a fine line. You also want to start new and live a life in a different country that it can be anything that you want to be. You could do breath work in Bali half the year if you wanted to, and then work at a cafe in Australia for a few months and go off and do another adventure and then go back home. And
it's so true. And life is always kind of waiting for you, right? So I feel like as much as it's a huge move to take 1 year and go travel, you can generally come back and do whatever you were doing before. It's really I can't imagine there's many opportunities that won't be there. I mean, I guess if you're like this really, really high paid person, maybe, but my guesses are you still could find a good position when you come back if that's for you.
Right, exactly. You can. It's not like your life is over back home. It's just it's like an not alternate universe, but alternate pathway, and then you can always turn back around if you don't like it.
Right. So did you like Tasmania, or do you prefer where you're at now? Would you say I wouldn't do that again? Or yeah.
No, actually, Hobart, it reminded me a lot of back home in the Northwest. Like there's mountains, there's hiking, there's just so much. It's a cooler weather type of place, so it never really gets hot. But it did remind me, like, there was these little farmers markets and like whiskey distilleries and things like that, and breweries are big. So it kind of reminded me of Portland a little bit and reminded me of Northwest. And so I was there over Christmas and New Year's. It was actually really nice to be somewhere that reminded me of home but wasn't home. So I could still just have that feeling where, like, oh, I'm in a different place. I can do whatever I want today. You know, I don't have to, I'm not stuck in the mindset where I would always feel like I was stuck sometimes, which is not true. Nobody's ever stuck. But it's easy to get into that mindset when you're around a lot of places that you know really well. Like being back home. If you're living back home, sometimes you can feel that feeling of stuck. But yeah, Tasmania was awesome. I would definitely go back. It's just a little bit colder, so you always have to have a jacket or a jumper. You can't. Here, it's tank top and shorts all day, every day, morning or night.
Throughout the year?
No, not throughout the year, but even the winter here, which is summer
Here.
back home, yeah.
Back home?
It's still pretty warm. I think the lows got to maybe 55 or 60.
Yeah.
So it's still really warm. Yeah. Even in the winter. So not a bad place to be.
So can you tell us some of the details, how much you're making, how much you spend?
Oh, yeah. I will say, I think Australia, you look at the price in the grocery store, and it is a little more expensive when you look at it. But if you convert it to US dollars, then it's actually not bad. So my rent here, I'm in a 3-room flat. It's pretty big, actually. I have a shared bathroom. I pay per week, so I pay $373 a week, which is okay. So Australian dollars. I think I had.
It's like $1,400 a month USD.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Australian dollars, and then
Australian.
you have to convert it to USD. I think the conversion is what, like 0.75 or something?
It's I think it was even the last time I checked, it was even lower than that, which is good. So
yeah,
like 0.62 or something, or might be 0.75 now.
Well, good for us, bad for them. But.
Yeah, right, I know.
Depends on who you ask.
Depends on who you're.
Yeah.
For Americans, it's great. Right. But, so that would be, I don't know, like a little under 1,000?
Okay. That's kind of a lot for a one-bedroom.
Well, that's for, yeah, that's true. The thing is, my location it's very close to the city. Everything's walkable. And so you can find a place that's a little bit cheaper. It just might be out a ways. But public transportation here in the state of, at least within this inner city of Brisbane, is 50-cent fares, which is amazing. Wow, so you can hop on a bus, you can take the train to Gold Coast, you can take the bus. I went up to Noosa Heads, which Noosa's like beautiful beach. It's about 3 hours north. By train, it's about 4 hours. But 50 cents. I went up and down for $1, which is, you can't get anything for that. It's crazy.
That sounds like Thailand, Bali prices,
Yes.
Vietnam, not Australia at all.
Yeah, so I mean, you're saving money with transport, and then as far as how I get paid, they do pay you based on how many years of experience you have, which is nice. So, and that's another reason why it's good to have some if you come as a nurse, to have a few years of experience before you come out here. But my rates here in the city for casual shifts could be anywhere from $62 per hour to $77, but then you get incentive pay. So if you work on a Saturday or Sunday, you can easily make over $120 to $130 an hour, Australian dollars. Which is really great.
That's amazing. Honestly, because I remember, and it could have changed obviously now, but when I was living there, that was 2016, 2017. I think I was making just a minimum wage job there, and it was like $22 an hour or something like that.
That's still minimum wage. You think about it, and you're thinking minimum wage is actually really
They
good.
have they have a high minimum wage, and it might be higher now. I imagine it is.
I would hope
It's
so.
Australian dollars an hour though, not USD, but
True. Good point.
but yeah, so I mean that's huge. You're making a lot more than, the normal working holiday person that's going to be working at Lululemon or whatever, which obviously as you should. You're educated, it's a professional job.
Yeah, it's a nice incentive because, I mean, you could also, if you wanted to take a break from nursing in the U.S. and just come out here, you could still live off minimum wage, which is something that I think in the U.S. it's so hard to imagine living off of minimum wage, especially depending on what city you're living in. But sometimes people have to have a couple jobs, and that's not to say that in Australia people don't have a couple jobs, 2 to 3 sometimes.
Right.
Is what I've heard. But
wow.
If you save enough money, that's the other thing is working holiday. I saved probably, they recommended to save anywhere from, what was it? Like $5,000 to $8,000. But then as of the past couple years, they actually recommended saving up to $10,000.
Just in case.
Just in case. Just to have in your account. And that's US dollars. So taking that here, just in case it's hard to find work and you have to put a deposit down in a place, that all adds up. The numbers as a whole look higher here. Everything seems more expensive. You go to a bar and your cocktail is generally $18 to $25 at just any.
Crazy.
You don't have to
Crazy,
tip
crazy,
though.
crazy.
There's no tipping culture out here.
Right.
So there's that.
Okay. Yeah, tell me more about the cost of things there.
Yeah, so like I said, like a bar, it would probably be 18 to 25. For restaurants, let's see, I just went out for a pasta dish at a nice place where I went recently was like 45 Australian dollars.
That's not normal.
Which is crazy. It is no.
That's a bit
it's
high,
not,
right?
It's a bit high.
You're gonna
Pizza
scare
was
people,
like
Lauren.
30. I know. I'm sorry. It's not always like that. And the other thing is, if you're American, you come out here, you have to have probably some travel insurance if you want medical. But if you're from the UK and you come out here, then there's that reciprocal agreement, so you don't have to, you're automatically enrolled in Medicare. Anyways, that's besides the point. But as far as how much things cost outside of rent, and what I pay is actually pretty average for the most part for my accommodations. But I mean, it sucks when you go into a store and you can't really convert all the time because you're getting paid in Australian dollars. So I bought a North Face jacket because I didn't have a rain jacket for some reason when I came out here, and it was less than $200 US, but when you look at the Australian number, it's quite a bit more. Gosh, I can't do the conversion in my head right now.
I know. You can't ask me to do it too. Somebody's gonna be like, "These two girls are idiots." But no, I mean,
I'm where's my calculator?
I don't know, it wasn't the other day, but I remember somebody was using a calculator to add up $1.25 plus 50 cents plus $2.75, and I was like, that's not that hard. Guys, we can do that. Or I don't mean to shout out my little sister. She's 19, but she couldn't figure out what 15% of a bill was to tip. Oh. She was using her calculator. She's never going to see this, so I don't mind sharing it. But I was like, come on, girl. You can do it.
Yeah. And there's easier ways to do that, where if you think 20% and then you just take 20% of each dollar, you can do that in your head so easily.
Oh yeah, I do what's 10% and then cut it in half and add it together,
Oh, that's another way. I never thought of that way. That's actually probably even easier. I just think 2 per each $10, I guess, is what I sometimes will think. I think in my head. It's like if it's a $40 bill, it's like 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, $8 is 10%.
20%, yeah. You're so funny.
But yeah, everything here, it's like you're getting paid more. So I try to think of it in that way. And if in doubt, you can pull up your bank account on your phone if you're not really sure how much you have before you make a big purchase.
Yes.
From personal experience. But yeah, things are just a little bit more expensive, but not extremely. It's almost like a more expensive city in the U.S. is what I feel like. Not even New York. I don't even know if it's New York prices. Maybe just a little bit below that. So it's not horrible. You should still come to Australia.
Okay, so like a fast food restaurant. I don't know if you've been to any fast food restaurants out there.
It's still pretty cheap.
Okay.
I think it's still pretty cheap. Like you can get, I don't think they have frozen Cokes back home. At least I never knew that they existed.
I don't know, like a Slurpee?
Yeah. Yeah, basically like that. Yeah, actually, it's the same thing as a Slurpee.
Basically, yes, exactly.
It is exactly.
You just never drank them. Yeah. Okay.
It's like you go to a McDonald's and they have a $1. It's $1 for a frozen Coke, or maybe $2. So it's not bad for that. You can easily spend less than $5 on a. Well, okay.
I'm losing you.
Oh no! It says trying to reconnect. Can you?
Oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, perfect.
I don't know. My Wi-Fi just kind of bounced out, it looked like, and came back.
No worries.
Yeah,
so it's kind of like
under
that.
$10.
It's under $10 for a meal?
Definitely. I would say.
Really?
Well,
it's kind of expensive here now, too. Like,
it has been expensive back home.
Yeah. I think my husband's spending like $14, $15 for a meal.
Oh. See, yeah, I think it's, to me, the numbers are the same, but then it's more expensive back home, I think, for fast food actually now. I think. Because I look at prices out here and I think if these were US dollars, that would be pretty similar. But it's not. So, yeah, I would say it's more affordable here. But there's also there's not as many fast food options here as there are back home.
I noticed that too. There was a lot less chains, not really many places that you could drive through. I don't know how it is there in Brisbane. But you also
it's
probably
the same sort of thing,
don't have a car that you're driving. Right?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. No. Well, driving on the opposite side. Exactly. You don't need it. You just, public transport's really good here, and or you just walk. Like, I've gotten really used to just, if it's a place that's like 2 miles away, you can just walk. Or, depending on the weather. But if it's nice weather, like, when you might as well, you could get some sunshine and get your walk in, so it feels good. But yeah, you're right. There's not many fast food places, or at least you have to walk in, not drive through. You have to walk into all these places.
Sure. Yeah.
And I think the FDA is a little bit stricter here. Well, maybe more than just a little bit than it is in the US. So there's not as many, there's still, it's not like fast food's good for you necessarily, but there's a lot of chemicals that I've realized when talking to Australians. They're like, oh, I remember when I went to the US and I was sick for like a week when I was there because I ate something, and it just, like, their bodies aren't used to the chemicals that can sometimes be in our food, specifically in like processed food. And I have heard though that the FDA is a little bit more strict with things that would normally be able to pass through the FDA in the US. But I think we have more organic vegan options in the US.
Oh, really?
Too, compared to Brisbane, for sure. I know that because my friend is vegan, and she was complaining yesterday about how few options there are.
I think Melbourne, it wasn't that difficult. I wasn't, I'm actually vegetarian, but I wasn't at the
Oh,
time.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah, Melbourne I think would be easier because there's so much, they're very diverse too. More
But
so,
Brisbane's
I
just a
think
little bit
Melbourne.
less.
I
Okay.
think a little bit less, yeah. It's not quite as big of a city as Sydney or Melbourne. It's still growing, but yeah, it's still kind of more of a smaller city.
So a little off topic. Have you seen AFL and how hot those guys are?
I have. I don't understand the game. I don't really know how it works, but
Yeah.
they are built different. That is for sure. Yes.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm a happily married woman, but I will watch AFL or footy
AFL.
any day.
Yeah.
That's the only like male sports that I'm like actually interested in, and it has nothing to do with the sport.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Well, and they're not wearing helmets either. Like they don't like they're not covered up so you can see exactly what their faces look like, and yeah, they're very good looking.
Yeah. Wait, did you go see a game? You gotta go see a game if you haven't.
I need to. No,
You
I
have
haven't
to
yet.
go. So much fun.
Where there's some in Melbourne, right? There's
Yes.
like a big. Okay, I'll have to. I need to make a trip down there. I haven't visited yet, so I'll have to go to the city, and then maybe that's when I'll get to watch a game. That'll be fun.
Definitely got to do that. So just a couple more questions before we end here. You had mentioned
Yeah.
TravelCon earlier. So TravelCon, that wasn't just for people in the medical field, or yes, it was.
Yeah, unfortunately, which is sucks because it's a total. It's so fun. It's
Okay.
basically, yeah, it's really fun. So, but it is
Well-
like for PAs and nurses and yeah, or not PAs. I'm sorry, like occupational therapists, physical therapists, and nurses.
Well, I'm sure that there is equivalent types of conferences that is not
Yeah.
just medical field.
Exactly. Yeah. I think there's some out there, and I know that Healthcare Australia is so big, and that's probably why they were able to bring a panel out to Vegas to be able to rope people in, and it's great to be able to reach a bigger audience, and I'm hoping that more people from the U.S. will come to Australia and maybe start with Healthcare Australia because it's a great agency to start with, and then you can always like branch out from there and work with different agencies and different hospitals and put your name out there a little bit.
You know, they might have some sort of referral link. I am imagining that, like under your
Yeah.
profile. So maybe
Oh, yeah.
if you look at that later, we could always add something here in case there are nurses or practitioners that are interested in having this type of experience.
Definitely. They do have a referral program that would benefit the person that signs on and the person that is referring you. So if anyone's interested in coming to Australia, I would be happy to help with that referral.
Yes,
We
girl.
both get a little money. Always
That's
something good.
That's the money dance. That's
It's
awesome.
a good dance.
So what's next for you? I know you had mentioned that you're staying in Brisbane longer than you thought. You signed a lease. You talked potentially residency. What are you kind of thinking for the future?
Oh gosh, this is always that big question that I don't know how to answer.
We won't hold you to it.
Well, I definitely am staying the full year. I think when I came out here, I wasn't sure if I would stay the full year, but definitely staying the full year.
And you don't have a ticket back home yet.
No,
Okay.
I don't. I was hoping to do some more international traveling too. So like I've been wanting to go to Japan, go to Korea, go to Bali, which
Yeah.
is so close to here. I think it's like a 4-hour flight or maybe.
Well,
5
that's the
hours?
typical Australian holiday, right?
It is, yeah. They
Uh-huh.
they say that actually a lot of Bali is just like you would think you're in Australia, just like an island, because there's so many people that just go there for holiday. But yeah, after this, to me this felt like I work in the emergency department, and I've worked emergency for most of my career, and it kind of felt like I was ready for something different. But this has been my different. And so, I think when I'm gonna go back home, I've thought about the potential of coming back out here. Like, I think I might need to be somewhere steady for a year or two, or I'm not sure. That can always change. And then I've thought about maybe permanently relocating out here, potentially in the future, like depending on my life.
How difficult
in that time
or easy that would be.
I'd have to look more. I think I have to look more into it to see what it would be like trying to apply when you're not in the country. Because most people who apply for their PR would do it when they're still on a working holiday visa or a skilled workers visa where they're in the country. I don't know what it's like to apply for that when you're out of the country. But so that's a possibility, but nothing on the horizon just yet. I know that I want to take another travel contract with the agency, like another 6-week contract to a different part of Australia, which is a nice way to get to know the area without, rather than just taking a trip or moving there. You're just living there for a few weeks and you feel kind of like a tourist, but kind of like a local. So it's like a nice
You can
in-between.
make some friends, maybe get to a gym or have some sort of routine.
Yeah. So it feels like a fleshed out like vacation. Like it feels more normal than just going somewhere for 6 weeks as like a true traveler. But that's kind of what's on the horizon. Oh, I'm going to New Zealand in April, which I'm really excited about with a pal of mine. And for a trip, not to work. Yeah, but so yeah, lots of trips. I think just more traveling and see where that takes me. And there's always the possibility that I could stay in the country, or I go back home. It's really up in the air, because it's so easy. It's actually, I feel like I don't know how you felt coming out here, but I felt like it's very difficult to be unhappy here. Like you have to try to not be happy. There's so much to be excited about.
Well, the thing is, I had so much support. I really admire you, Lauren, that you went out there on your own, because I don't think it's easy. So you really have to put yourself in situations where you can make friends and create those deep relationships and have a community, because without that, life isn't as exciting unless you have somebody to share it with, in my opinion.
Yeah, that is true, Natasha. And I think you're so right about that, like how it's just with the support system, whether they're there with you or you meet people along the way that can be your support while you're here. I've been lucky enough to find people that have been very supportive in times when I've been really sad or lonely or missed family back home, and we're in the same boat really because we're both out here and we're just kind of figuring it out, and we don't have any family here, and maybe their family is also across the world. And so it's like I said, like it's not always for everybody because it's a big change, and you just have to make sure that you have the right support back home and that you have built up kind of the right support people around you when you're in the country too.
Great. Well, thank you again for sharing your story. Is there anything that you'd like to add to people who might be looking for inspiration from this story, from you as a practitioner or traveler, that you want to share with them?
I think just like what I'd said before, where it's kind of like a journey where you're learning a lot about yourself, but you're also, like I said, you're learning a lot about other people. And even though Australian culture isn't extremely different from American culture, part of the big experience out here is just meeting beautiful people, just like people with beautiful souls, and getting to know them and just connecting with people as a whole. And it actually makes you feel like when you, even if it's someone like at the coffee shop or something, or a patient at work, like it's just making that human connection. Because I think we've lost so much of that during COVID. And that's part of the great thing about traveling to different places, is like you're getting to know their story. And that's actually one of my favorite things about living out here in Australia, is getting to know people on a deeper level than maybe I would have normally asked someone back home. When you're in a comfortable position, you don't feel like you have to.
You already have your friends. You already have the things that you do. You have your people there. Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. So you don't feel like you have to make new friends all the time. But it's nice to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And I think you should. That's the point of life, is to make yourself uncomfortable, because you never know what's on the other side of that discomfort. It could be just beautiful things, amazing things that are coming your way. You just have to get past that uncomfortable feeling.
And you're going to have so many amazing friendships that are going to be lifelong. I still talk to one of my best friends from that I met at the gym. She lives in Cyprus now. She's Australian.
Oh,
but
no kidding. Okay.
Yeah. I actually I interviewed her in my 2020 episodes, and she's amazing. And I think that you're gonna have some wonderful friendships that you've gained from this experience, because you grow such a close connection in such a short amount of time with this type of immersion. So I'm really excited for that for you.
Oh, thank you. I'm really excited too. And it feels like I already have some friends like that will last a long time. So it's a good feeling. Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. Well, Lauren, we're going to stop here for today, but I want to thank you again for sharing your experience. And I hope you listeners enjoyed the conversation and got something from that.
Thanks, Natasha. You've been awesome. Thanks for having me.